We don't build armies the same way we used to. And we certainly don't play the game the way we used to. So let me ask you, why are you still building terrain the same old way? Find out a new way to build terrain today on Tactical Terrain. Welcome back to another episode of Tactical Terrain. As always, my name is Eric, and this week we dive into the mailbox. John writes us, Dear Tactical Terrain Eric, a couple of years back I had the pleasure of playing you in the Burke's Spring Assault event, and back then I noticed you were playing Chaos Space Marines. Yeah, these guys. Well, rumor has it that you kind of may have sold out, and you're now no longer playing the Traitor Legions, but the pointy-eared, overpowered Eldar? Say it isn't so, Eric. Sincerely, John. Well, John, I got a couple updates for you. Number one, as a guy who grew up in the 80s, being told I was sold out is fighting words. But I held on to my rebellious side from the 80s, that's me on the right, and decided to continue to play 40k on hard mode. So I'm actually playing Dark Eldar, not Eldar, although I have a few Eldar allies. And yes, I'm super excited about the new Traitors Hate expansion that just came out, which is currently available at frontlinegaming.org. And I thought this week, let's dive into some Chaos Terrain. Let's get into it now. So for starters here, I have a simple floor tile that I'm going to use for a basing of terrain. Really doesn't matter whether this is a ruin or line of sight or what have you. As you can see, 9.5 by 9.5 because this is for an ITC event. I'm going to put my walls of my ruin there. That leaves all this open area on the side. I've got my nifty Chaos stencil, a little symbolism there. I'm going to lay that down, and now I'm going to get some of our key things. So I've got a little black paint, some good old Home Depot Bear. I've got a crappy brush. And I've got some textured sand. This is all available in the paint section here at your Home Depot, except for maybe the cup. They've got other cups. You can use those. Anyways, so what we're going to do here is take a little bit of the paint, and I'm going to just a little bit. I only have about half a cup in there. And I'm going to add a little bit of sand. Now the directions on the side of the box say you should add 1 part sand to 8 parts paint. And one of the other things, I've never found that to be quite thick enough for terrain making, but then again, I always skip the step that you're supposed to let it sit for 30 minutes before using, and I always just go right to it. So realistically, I'm adding about closer to 4 parts paint, 1 part sand, so double the amount you're supposed to. One of the things that you're not seeing me do, and this is very common, this technique is called making rubble paste, is I'm not raiding my bit bin and I'm getting a whole bunch of pebbles and rocks. A lot of players like to make this gooey, gloppy bouillabaisse of bumpiness and put it all together. As you see, as I start applying this already has a very fine grit to it. Now let's say I've got this really cool Cities of Death floor section. There we go. The autofocus finally kicked in. You can see it has that little gritness already to it. Now, if let's say I spent some extra money, went to and ordered those dead Space Marine bodies, and I threw them in the mix, that little grittiness would have gotten all over the bit and blown out any details you have in those models. So always start with a sand base and then add thicker, bulkier textures later. You also notice the brushing technique I'm using. I'm not using long strokes. This is not W's that you do for painting walls in your house. This is more of a stimpling technique. This stuff is pretty thick. You really want to get this about the thickness of instant oatmeal would probably be the best way to describe it. No particular flavor, of course. So also when you're working with a stencil, you want to make sure you get the edges as quickly as possible and really work the corners, because that's where the really the eye tends to lead to. So you really want to work those pretty well. There we go, working a couple layers. I move the cup so you guys can see. Notice I'm not going all the way to the edge of the ruin, the base. That's because my ruin walls need a flat surface to actually adhere to. If it's too bumpy, they will look funny because they'll be kind of floating in the air instead of touching the ground. There we go, get the last little corner. And really, you can start to see the texture starting to build up already. Now, put the brush out of sight, off camera. And I'm going to get my little paper towel ready. There we go. And then grab the stencil from each corner and carefully lift in one quick motion. There we go. Check it out. Now you're probably asking, why is he using this horror bad yellow? Patience, grasshopper. We'll get to there. Alright, once our base layer has fully dried, that's one of the key steps. You need to let this dry for quite some time. You want to go in and simply apply a little dry brushing. So we're going to start off with basic kind of a darker gray. Think of like a vermin gray type thing. This again, once again, we're still using our Home Depot paints, and we don't use a whole lot. So as you notice also, same old crappy brush that you saw earlier in the video. And the key here is that because the textured areas are so much more raised than the yellow non-textured areas, you really want to really focus on getting that textured area to pop. So it's really essential that you really get that dry brushing in, especially into the corners and into the deeper sections there. So I'm working my way through the middle section there. So it's going to give it this sort of molten rock that's recently cooled, maybe some ash waste. You get the general idea. So that's I really want the contrast of the dark black against the yellow, soon to be further colored. Yep, we haven't forgotten about the putrid yellow. We'll get rid of that soon. And you can see I'm still using more of a stimpling method because I don't want to go too crazy and splatter too much onto the yellow areas. But yeah, even get those. It's very important. Those little details like that. There are details still in terrain building. That's one of them. Make sure you get the in-betweens of the wagon's 6 spiked circle there. There we go. Getting all to the nifty corners. Making the rounds. Oop, got a little bit in the yellow section. Yeah, we'll clean that up later. Keep working it. And a lot of it is simply just a feel, and as well as what you feel is bright enough at this particular point. We're still going to add another color. And at this point, we're going to reach for a much lighter tone. Here we go. So this is a much lighter gray. This is kind of your Dawnstone gray kite color. Again, another Home Depot paint like a lime. And this one's called, I think, Gray Area. Brilliant name. So anyway, as you see, I'm kind of dry brushing away from the key areas that I want. And now we're really seeing the texture really start to pop. And remember, this is nothing more than paint and sand. So nothing's going to come loose during gameplay. You don't have to worry about rhinos or razorbacks rolling over this and kicking up small pieces of rock. These are pretty well impregnated into the base and aren't going to go anywhere. So we'll just keep working the sections there. Get those little spikes inside the wheel. There we go. Keep working it. Yep, a little bit more on the brush here. And again, these are the same rules you follow as you would for regular dry brushing with your models. Too much on the brush, you know exactly what's going to happen. Light touch, a lot more of it has to do with feel and pressure with the brush than it does with actual paint, but keep the amount of paint on the brush a minimum, and you'll do just fine. See, here we go. Get those. Yeah, there's a nice big chunk of texture there. I want to make sure that really stands out. Alright, now we get the old airbrush out. What I got here is Creatix Transparent Orange. And I told you we'd take care of this yellow section. What we're going to do is going to set up about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch stripe. I'm going to have it right down the middle. Half of it's going to go across the black area, half of it's going to cross the yellow area, and go along every section that's yellow. Give this nice magma glow. The key here is using transparent orange as opposed to an opaque orange if you're buying airbrush paints. That way the yellow not only bleeds through, but one of the reasons why I took a much brighter gray when I did the dry brushing, I kind of got that OSL effect that as the orange spills over onto the rock, the white areas will also glow orange, but the black areas won't pick up the orange color at all. So it kind of gives that nice OSL that the brightness of the lava is glowing onto the rock. In reality, it's just, realistically, it's just paint being applied in a wide cone. Alright, we finished with the orange at this particular point. Now we're going to come in with one of my favorite colors when it comes to terrain, burnt umber. Okay, get it going here. And this is going to be a little more studious and a much finer line. This one, I don't want to obliterate the orange. I just want to like a much thinner line, 1/8 of an inch to even smaller if I can when I get to some of those smaller details when I get towards the top. Again, burnt orange, really great color. Once again, it is transparent, burnt umber, burnt umber. Again, using that transparent color, so again, some of the orange is going to bleed through and give you some semblance of red, but it's also going to, as it hits the black areas, not really show up as much once it dries, but the lighter areas that we dry brushed earlier are going to still have some of that OSL effect. As I work my way through all the little nuggets here. Yeah, get on all the nooks and crannies here. Don't forget the little arrows up here. Getting into that. And the key is just, you want to keep the sharp edges there, but you just want to get the slow feel and get the illusion that, yeah, it's glowing from underneath. So you got the glow on the edges. You still keep the middle super bright. That really popping yellow that we used before really sets the tone and a really striking contrast. And this is something you don't see a lot. Oh, here we go. I'm painting on these little edges. I got a little sloppy here. Probably nervous because I'm being on camera here. Yeah, that was a little sloppy, but you can do better than that. I challenge you to do better than that. Anyway, as I was saying, the black with the magma color, this orange and yellows, and with the burnt umber, creates a huge contrast. You don't see that a lot in terrain making. A lot of times you're just simply told keep mute colors. This is a great way to really make your terrain tables pop. And all this is a simple base. There we go. Work a little bit more. Don't forget the edges here. I'm going to do the edges of the terrain at this point. Kind of gives a nice little flow, so almost gives that the illusion that the ruins are floating on an island of magma. This would really go great with the new magma fat mat that Frontline Gaming offers here as well. So let's get a closer look. You can see some of the handiwork. You can really see the texture a little bit better. Really came out well. Really excited about this. And most of the painting you saw in here, yeah, it's all in real time. So most of your time was spent drawing. This could be a real simple project. Here's what it looks like. Put some ruined walls down. This is one of our classics at this point. But in future episodes, we'll show you how to do a little more chaos-oriented walls. And there we have it. Feast on, you traitor legions. Death to the false emperor. Thanks again for watching. Remember, as always, Frontline Gaming sells Games Workshop products at up to 25% off retail every day. You can also pick up some cheap models in our secondhand shop. Some of the gems are quite rare, and sometimes they're fully painted. All of this available at www.frontlinegaming.org.